All right, so this is going to continue with our talks on progressivism, but looking at it at the state and national level, with a primary focus on Robert Lafayette of Wisconsin and then Theodore Roosevelt. If we get to it, we will talk about Taft and Wilson, but that might be saved for another talk, probably the election of 1912. So anyway, with the networks of progressive journals and journalists in place, like the muckrakers from the past video, progressivism started to expand beyond this city level reform. And so two of the most flamboyant individuals in American history are going to be responsible for expanding the progressive movement to the state and national levels, almost at the same time. Robert Lafayette, sometimes known as Battlin' Bob, became the progressive governor of Wisconsin. And then Theodore Roosevelt brought progressivism to the whole country when he became president in the wake of the assassination of William McKinley. And a look at look at the lives of both men is almost like a look at the American dream as the 20th century opened. And we'll start off with Bob Lafayette. He led a life in Wisconsin similar to that of a sheriff in an old Western movie. Like a hero that cleaned up the town. He rose from relative obscurity to be the youngest member of the House of Representatives, a senator, the governor, and a presidential candidate. While Lafayette often resorted to patronage, he served 3 terms as the governor of Wisconsin and brought progressivism to his state by 1900, making Wisconsin the envy of other progressive-minded states. Sometimes Wisconsin was known as the laboratory of democracy. Lafayette worked his way up through college and law school and took this brand of fanatic patriotism on the campaign circuit around the state. He pioneered this tactic of barnstorming, or speaking wherever and whenever people would gather to listen. And this won him the district attorney's job without even being endorsed by his own party, which was the Republican Party. By 1884, he made his youthful debut in the House of Representatives, but then soon returned to practicing law when he was defeated in 1890. So the Republican Party of Wisconsin indulged in, at this time, it indulged in Gilded Age graft with railroads and lumber companies. Party leaders tried to bribe Lafayette to influence his brother-in-law, who happened to be a judge, to ease up on these regulations that hindered these industries. Not only did Lafayette refuse to bribe, he exposed the whole affair to the press. Forever, he cut himself off from the Republican Party. After that, he campaigned on his own for 10 years and won the governorship in 1900. And so as governor, Lafayette developed a strategy to push a variety of progressive reforms that became so successful that it was often referred to as the Wisconsin idea, or that whole idea of the laboratory of democracy, as these ideas that were started in Wisconsin spread around the country. Some things that Lafayette did is that he set up an independent regulatory commission made up of experts. University professors in, say, forestry were called up to come up with ideas that Lafayette could then make popular. Think about this, and this is the type of person that Lafayette was. Can you think of anything more boring, other than this lecture, than listening to botany facts and statistics? But the thing about Lafayette is he could take the plans from the state university professors and barnstorm them around in exciting attacks on the lumber giants. His persuasive style of leadership, coupled with their scientific expertise, created this new phenomenon in American politics: a government machine run by the educated elite with the full support of an enthusiastic populace. So this unstoppable combination of a government machine run by the educated elite um, has been used in one form or another ever since. A short list of some immediate progressive reforms reveals that whereas in 1900 half the states had no laws for a minimum age for workers, by 1914 all but one state had a limit. By 1917, 39 states shortened the workday for women. Muller versus Oregon helped out with that. And 8 states had minimum wage laws for women. By 1916, 2/3 of the states had a workman's compensation laws to protect and provide workers injured on the job. Obviously, these are not accomplishments of politicians looking out for the interests of big business. Progressives saw themselves as returning to the example of the Founding Fathers. Many progressives, like Lafayette, were independently wealthy and devoted their public service careers not to pocketing more money, but helping out the needy. Progressive heroes imagined themselves possessed of a disinterested benevolence. This is harking back to like a George Washington or John Adams, who did this because they felt like it was their duty to their country and to the people. Unlike Lafayette, the other guy that we were going to talk about, Teddy Roosevelt, was not a self-made man. His American dream stemmed from his ancestors, who were among the first to settle in New Amsterdam and eventually establish a glass importing business. The Roosevelts, which is a name meaning a field of roses, were among the richest American blue blood families. Theodore Roosevelt's father was a New York City banker, and Roosevelt was raised with all the privileged trappings of a Gilded Age upper-class lifestyle. As a child, he was hampered by asthma, and Teddy, as he became known, was told by his father at the age of 6 that he was brilliant. But besides being given a brain, he was also given a body. "You're going to have to build your body," his father told him, as a gym was installed in the family home. And TR was the first president of the United States to lift weights. He actually, you can't completely overcome your asthma, but he did, he did as much as he could to try to overcome that, living what he called abide the philosophy of what he called the strenuous life. So from that point on, from a little kid on, TR was possessed of phenomenal, nearly obscene amounts of energy. His Harvard education made him an historian and a classical scholar, but his curiosity and his drive made him an amateur naturalist, a cowpuncher, rough rider, and big game hunter. In short, he was an American Renaissance man who entered politics because he wanted to be among the doers. He was also among the readers. He read a book a day his entire adult life. And so this bundle of energy became president at age 42, the youngest man ever to hold that office. After McKinley was shot in September of 1901 in Buffalo, New York, Roosevelt claimed to the cabinet that he would continue all of the fallen president's policies. There was, to be said, it's like this audible sigh of relief in the room. Everybody was worried about Theodore Roosevelt. He was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He became a Rough Rider and fought in the Spanish-American War. And he became vice president pretty much just to keep him out of the way. No one ever had any plans of him actually being president. So this article sigh in the room, but within 1 year, Theodore Roosevelt was challenging Congress at every turn. By 1909, after winning a second term in his own right, TR had launched the progressive reform at the national level and made the U.S. president the most powerful individual in America and in the world. While not every president has deserved or wanted that status, they possessed it because of TR. He called the presidency something called a bully pulpit, from which he preached that the benefits of being a member of the wealthy class and a Harvard graduate entailed social responsibility. It's almost it's very similar to this gospel of wealth that Andrew Carnegie had preached earlier. He laid the foundations, therefore, for the modern welfare state, and we'll talk more about that when we look at his distant cousin, FDR. Teddy Roosevelt's social conservatism and pugnacity were mixed perfectly with political shrewdness to make him a powerful reformer. He is by far the most eager man to have ever been president. If you look at his rise to power, this is a stunning, it's like a stunning arc of talent that began by being elected to the New York legislature as a representative. He ran for mayor of New York City. The next after that, he lost. But his career had received a sudden blow with the death of his first wife and his mother in the same house on the same day in 1884, Valentine's Day. Ironically enough, to escape these tragic events, he bought a ranch out in the Dakota Territory and worked right alongside his cowhands. He became famous for knocking a cowboy out cold who had called him Four Eyes in a bar, and for admonishing one of his workers on a cattle drive by shouting, "Hasten forward, thither!" He also became famous for writing The Winning of the West. This is a multi-volume history of westward settlement that was nationalistic, patriotic, and filled with biographies of heroic expansionists. And throughout this work, The Winning of the West, he expressed Federalist opinions, going so far as to call Thomas Jefferson a humbug and a hypocrite. These exploits brought him to the attention of President Benjamin Harrison, who placed this energetic young man onto the United States Civil Service Commission from 1889 to 1895. And this is where Theodore Roosevelt received much publicity by being a Republican who actually believed, much to Harrison's surprise, in civil service reform. We remember the whole reason, the Republican Party has been with Grant, and then Hayes. Garfield was killed because of this idea of graft and patronage. You had the Republican Party split between the stalwarts, the mugwumps, the half-breeds on these issues. So Roosevelt was something, of a unique Republican. Even greater publicity came with a new post as the New York City chief of police. And this is where I mentioned in a previous video that him and Jacob Riis would sneak around at night to catch corrupt cops and violators of liquor laws. Riis took photos of TR catching the offenders red-handed, and the photos appeared in newspapers, making TR's teeth, mustache, and glasses famous. Roosevelt would then work all the next day after a night out to avoid letting his desk work get behind, and then stay up the next night to go out and catch some more evildoers who assumed he would be home in bed. Then he would go to work the next day so no one could say he was a slacker at the office. How many hours was he awake by then? 60 or something? You guys thought I never slept. And so now these exploits brought him to the attention of William McKinley, who made him Assistant Secretary of the Navy. And this is where he read Alfred Thayer Mahan's book and operated with nationalistic and militaristic views. And when the war broke out with Spain in 1898, Roosevelt sought to enlarge this heroic image by resigning from the Navy Department and mustering up the Rough Riders. And you probably left Theodore Roosevelt charging up San Juan Hill and talking about how when he shot a Spaniard in the stomach, that the enemy soldier crumpled like a rabbit. Excuse me. And so this heroic image was tempered by the fact that Theodore Roosevelt had stashed a dozen pairs of glasses all over his uniform, apparently terrified that an accident would leave him blind. All the nation saw, however, was his gallant flesh wound and his triumphant return to win as governor of New York. His Rough Riders even rode around and shot their weapons in the air during his campaign. And his rise didn't stop. Despite the fact that he begun to show progressive leanings, McKinley took him on as his vice president. The Republican Party wanted to capitalize on TR's fame, but imagine once again, like I mentioned earlier, that the nearly useless role of VP would keep him harmless. Mark Hanna, the campaign manager, had reminded the Republicans that only one heartbeat stood between the madman and the presidency. And that noble heart stopped. I say noble because I can never forget McKinley's treatment of his wife, who had a bizarre condition that prompted her to occasionally have spasms of the face that caused her to make demonic expressions, even during state dinners. When such an episode took her, President McKinley would merely just take out his handkerchief and cover her face until this fit was over. Then he resumed conversation as if nothing had happened. And it kind of begs the question, how can an assassin ever shoot a man this kind? Well, he did in 1901, and now the madman was president.